Hello, this is Amanda back with another Fairy Stamper video, and today I'm just going to make a card. Sometimes it's just nice to make a card. I usually try to think of some special technique or something to go with my videos so I can teach you something, but today I just wanted to make a card. So I hadn't used the Phoenix stamp from my Fairy Hugs collection, and I really wanted to use that. And usually my thoughts with Phoenix is that they're rising from the ashes or some kind of flamed something or other. So I wanted to put flames on my card. And like I said, since rising from the ashes, I kind of thought that a nice gray smoky background would go well with this. So I pulled out some of my grays and silver shimmer powders, and I've got a variety of different brands of shimmer powders. Today I'm going to be working with one of the Lindy's magical powders and the Nuvo, a couple Nuvo shimmer powders. Now I have all my shimmer powders swatched out. Actually, a majority of my mediums are swatched out. So it was easy for me to just bring out my binder and pick some of these powders. Now, if you're not familiar with shimmer powders or pigment powders, the color that you get, so like with the grays and the silvers and stuff, the majority of it is going to be that color, but there are also other pigments that make up that color. So that's why you see a little bit of the pink and the blue and whatnot in these powders. So I did one layer of all four of the powders that I had picked out, and the colors will be listed in the description box below. I don't have them popping up on the screen like I usually do in my videos, because oftentimes I will show the camera the colors as I'm using them, but I did not do that, so I don't know what order I use these colors in. So anyway, I used all four colors for the first layer, and then I dried it with my heat tool. And then because I didn't want the whole background to have a lot of those extra colors in there, I wanted it to mostly be a smoky gray kind of background. And I went back to my swatch book and I picked two of the colors that had the least amount of those other colors in them, if that makes sense. I probably should have showed you the swatches on the camera, but I didn't think of it at the time. So I picked the darker colors and the ones that had the least amount of extra pigment, or showed the extra pigment, you know, according to my swatches at least. Now you're going to get something different every time you use these pigment powders, but the two colors that I felt had the least amount of these pigments. And of course I didn't write this down. I'm in the middle of creating and not really thinking what I'm doing here for you, but I went back and chose those two colors, and that's how I created my background. Now I've got this this die from Whimsy Stamps that is called a revealer's die, and it's supposed to kind of like give you a reveal on your card, if that makes any sense. But I think it looks like a flame. So I made my mom a card for Mother's Day that had Taz from the Looney Tunes on it, and I used it as a flame on that card. So I thought it would be fun to use it as a flame for this this Phoenix stamp. So I did the ink blending for that whole background piece that I cut the flames off of off screen, because I didn't do anything fancy there. I do have the colors listed in the description box below if you would like to know what those colors are. And then I just cut a bunch of these flames out of that background color, background cardstock. Now, to get the flames going different directions so they weren't all the same, I did cut some as you normally would cut a die, and then I cut some from the back of the cardstock. Now, so I don't get the impressions from my cutting plates, I did put down a piece of copy paper, so my cutting plates would not make those weird little cutting indents on the cardstock. So there's a little trick for you for that if you were not aware of that. And now I'm just laying these down. Now I did stack some white die cuts behind some of these off screen, that way I get a little bit of dimension. And so on this one, because it's going to hang off and I'm now starting to get quite a bit of dimension here, I'm just going to cut a partial flame behind here, just so it stacks up a little bit nicer and I don't get a weird part where the bottom of the flame is stacked up higher than the top of the flame. I hope that makes sense. So I was just kind of measuring and seeing how far I needed that to, needed that back piece to go so it didn't do that. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes it's harder to explain things than it is to kind of show. So I hope showing you on video what I'm doing here makes more sense than me talking it out, because words are hard sometimes. So now the last one, since I've got so many flames stacked up here, and it would be really strange to try to cut little pieces of paper to go behind that last flame, I only have one piece of white cardstock behind this one, and I'm going to use foam tape for this because I just felt like this was going to be easier than to try to put little pieces of paper behind that one and make it all work out for me. So for stability reasons, I do have another piece of cardstock behind here so it doesn't get crushed if I decide to send this in the mail. But I did decide to put some pieces of foam tape, so I still got that extra bit of lift and dimension, but I did stack one piece of cardstock behind there just so it has some nice stability. So we're just going to put this last piece on here, and then that will finish up the flame part for now. I am going to add a little bit extra a little later, but that's just going to finish this off. And as you could see during this whole part, I am cutting off the extra pieces as I'm going because I knew that it was going to get very thick later on and it might be a little difficult to try to cut off those extra pieces from the bottom as I kept stacking them up. Because they did have, let's see, one of them had 2 layers, one of them had 3 layers, you know, that kind of thing. All right, so I did want to stamp my Phoenix here and my sentiment. So I do have this Hero Art Ombre ink pad. It's like butter bar to, I don't remember. Anyway, it's got some orange and some red and stuff in it. So kind of like yellow orangey colors. So that way it's got a little bit of an ombre color to it, make my Phoenix a little bit more interesting, instead of just stamping him in one solid color or try to mix my ink pads. I do have a couple of these kind of ombre colors from different companies. This is the only one I have from Hero Arts, but I do have another one, a Kaleidoscope one and stuff like that. So I pick these up every once in a while when I see them on clearance. So I've got a couple different brands of these ombre or mixed colored pads, and they're kind of fun to play with every once in a while. The sentiment is About You from Fairy Hugs, and I stamped that in VersaFine Clair. Off screen, I did take my ink blending brushes that I used for the flames and just kind of did that around the edges so it wasn't such a stark white color for the sentiment. And then I did take my Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen in Midas Touch, which is the gold one, and I went over the flames with that, you know, because I just didn't have enough shimmer enough already, apparently, even though I used the shimmer powders on the background. This card is very shimmery. Off screen, I also did use my Stardust glitter pens on the Phoenix to color in his wings and some parts on his tail. Because like I said, apparently I just didn't have enough shimmer. There is never too much shimmer sometimes. I feel like sometimes I either go with just a little bit of shimmer or, well, let me back that up. Either I go no shimmer or I go all in. So I did mat this piece on a piece of black cardstock, and then I'm putting it down on my white card base. Let's see. Oh, and then I'm going to put the sentiment on here, but as you can see, the flames are all uneven on here because of all that dimension. So I'm just going to put a little bit of foam tape on the edges here. I did have to double stack it, but it's only going to be on each end, and then we're just going to use a little bit of liquid adhesive in the middle to hold that down. That way it kind of makes it a little bit more even. There is still a little bit of unevenness in the middle, but that's all right. Nobody's going to see that unless it gets squashed in the mail, I guess, but hopefully it won't get squashed if I send this out. But other than that, it should be good to go. This finishes off my project for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. There are links to the products that I used from the Fairy Stamper store today, and links to the Fairy Stamper Facebook page, the group where you can share your projects and participate in the monthly challenges and get a chance to win a gift card. And there are links to my social media as well as the Fairy Stamper social media. And as always, have a great day.